Good morning everybody, this is Stephen Pugh of the Home Bible College. We're going to give a small lecture for the benefit of the second year students of the Home Bible College. This is lecture number 5. We're going to be taking in 2 complete books of the New Testament, of the Old Testament here. The first book is the book of Numbers and the second book will be Deuteronomy. So we're going to try and cover an outline of these 2 books. Now the first book, the book of Numbers, we would call it Census and Rebellion. So it has 36 chapters written by Moses probably between about 1450 and 1410 BC. It is called arithmoi in the Septuagint, which means arithmetic. Numbers is a book for pilgrims. It tells the story of how Israel prepared to enter Canaan, but how that they sinned against the Lord and how that therefore they wandered in the wilderness. And how the next generation repented and prepared to enter the land of Canaan. Now Numbers tells the journey from Mount Sinai to Kadesh Barnea. At Kadesh Barnea their unbelief turned into disobedience and they were refused entrance into the land. Now only Joshua and Caleb, the faithful spies, entered Canaan. It was a journey between 150 and 200 miles. That could have taken 40 days. But 40 years later they came back to exactly the same place at Kadesh Barnea. At the first census they had 603,550 fighting men. But at the second census they had a little less. They had 601,730 fighting men. Now, the book of Hebrews in the New Testament is the counterpart to the book of Numbers in the Old Testament. In fact, there's a very interesting passage here in Hebrews chapter 3 which explains to us how we're unable to make this passage fit Christians today. The book of Hebrews is not for Christians today. It is about the Hebrews. It is about this covenant people in their unique covenant relationship with the Lord and in their ongoing relationship with Him. So let's read what it says in Hebrews chapter 3 and you'll see exactly why I say that this passage cannot be applied to Christians today, and it explains therefore the whole book of Hebrews. Let's read it. Hebrews chapter 3 verse 8, it says, "Harden not your hearts as in the provocation." Now the expression the provocation, it describes that period in Israel's history in which they provoked the Lord to anger. Now let's read on. It says, "Harden not your hearts as in the provocation, in the day of temptation in the wilderness, when your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my works 40 years. Wherefore I was grieved with that generation, and said, They do always err in their heart, and they have not known my ways. So I swear in my wrath that they shall not enter into my rest. Take heed, brethren, lest there be any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God, but exhort one another daily, while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. For we are made partakers of Christ if we hold the beginning of our confidence steadfast unto the end." Now you notice what it says there. He says we are partakers of Christ. Now that doesn't mean that the people he's writing to are Christians. What he's saying is that you are, now the word are is in the past tense, but of course it's referring to a future event. He says we are made partakers of Christ. Israel, the Hebrews, are going to enter into everything that Christ provides for them in the Messianic kingdom, but only if we hold the beginning of our confidence steadfast unto the end. So for Israel, it's not the same for Christians, but for Israel, their relationship with God and their entrance into the Messianic kingdom and all the blessings of Christ will only be if they are steadfast unto the end. Verse 15, "While it is said, Today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts as in the provocation. For some, when they heard, did provoke, howbeit not all that came out of Egypt by Moses. But with whom was he grieved 40 years? Was it not of them that had sinned, whose carcasses fell in the wilderness, and to whom he sware that they should not enter into his rest, but to them that believed not? So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief. Now this isn't belief and unbelief in relation to Christianity or the church. This is belief or unbelief in relation to the Messiah of Israel. The children of Israel in the wilderness, which is described in the book of Numbers, they forsook the Lord. They didn't believe the Lord. They refused to believe what the Lord had for them, and so they died in the wilderness. And what the epistle to the Hebrews is saying, don't do this all over again. Of course, from history we now know that the children of Israel did reject the Lord Jesus. They did reject the message of the apostles, and as a result of that, they had a national destruction. The Jews were totally destroyed by the Roman legions in AD 70. That didn't mean that they were destroyed utterly, not completely. There was a remnant. However, that remnant were very small. And so in the book of Numbers we have first of all the first census, and at the very end we have the second census. Now the second thing in Numbers is we have the first approach to Canaan, and the spies are sent out, and then we have the desert wanderings. For 40 years they wandered, and then we have the second approach to Canaan, and then we have lastly the second census. So this is it. This is the book of Numbers. It's all about getting ready to march. It's all about moving forward, and then sadly it's all about rebellion. And then we have Korah's rebellion. We have the rebellion of the prophet Balaam, and we have the new generation preparing to enter into the land after 40 years. Wow. Now the book of Deuteronomy. Now the book of Deuteronomy is the last book of the law, the first 5 books of the Pentateuch. The word Pentateuch there just means the 5 books. It has 34 chapters, written by Moses probably in about 1407 BC to encourage people, the children of Israel, to devote themselves to their covenant God. Moses spoke face to face with God, that is, person to person. And the word Deuteronomy means the second law. Now it's not just a repetition of the law, but it is a commentary on the law in the light of new situations and in the light of 40 years of experience in the wilderness. All of the quotations of Christ during his temptation come from this book. Okay, so in Matthew chapter 4 verse 4 we have a quotation from Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 3. In Matthew 4 verse 7 we have a quotation from Deuteronomy 6 verse 16. Matthew 4:10 from Deuteronomy 6 verse 13. So it is written to people who will enter Canaan. And the key word is how to love and obey God. So Moses reviews God's deeds. Moses explains the principles of holy living for his covenant people, and Moses calls Israel to devotion. And then of course at the very end we have a record of the last days of Moses and of his death and of his burial. So that's the book of Deuteronomy. These little lectures, they're not designed to be very big, they're designed to be small. You can listen to them 1 or 2 times through to just enable it to all sink in. But that's the book of Deuteronomy, which we call Devotion to God. And there we are. We look forward to speaking to you again next week. God bless you, and bye for now.